Top 7. Terrifying archaeological discoveries. Scarier than horror movies that shocked scientists. We are all familiar with ancient Egypt, its pyramids, and the pharaohs from thousands of years ago. We're so accustomed to the image of the Giza Pyramids, wonders that, to this day, modern science still cannot fully explain how the Egyptians built them. Could these magnificent structures be the product of human hands, or is there some mysterious force behind them? These are the kinds of questions I think will always linger in your mind whenever you think about archaeology and human history. However, it's not just the Giza Pyramids. A series of other archaeological discoveries around the world are raising questions about human history, and some of these discoveries are even scarier and more mysterious than horror films, leaving even the bravest scientists puzzled. So, what groundbreaking discoveries has the field of archaeology made in recent years? Join me in today's video as we unravel all these mysteries. The mysterious miniature mummies in 17 coffins. When we think of mummies, the first thing that comes to mind is usually Egypt, the land of the pharaohs with its ancient art of mummification. However, in the legendary land of Arthur's Seat in the United Kingdom, there are also famous and mysterious mummies. These are not the mummies of kings or humans, but rather mummies of strange little figures. Arthur's Seat is a hill located to the east of Edinburgh Castle in the city of Edinburgh, Scotland. It is one of the UK's legendary landmarks, believed to be the site of the legendary Camelot Castle, owned by the famous King Arthur. In 1836, one of the most shocking discoveries in the Western world occurred here. The London Times, in its issue from July 20th of that year, described a strange event as follows. 5 boys, while hunting rabbits at Arthur's Seat, discovered a strange rock face. Somehow, they ventured into a small cave there and found 17 miniature mummies. Each mummy was only 3 to 4 inches long. The 5 boys were completely stunned. Unlike the usual large mummies wrapped in white bandages, the mummies at Arthur's Seat were very small. More specifically, these were 17 wooden figure mummies, each with its corresponding coffin. Each figure had meticulously crafted clothing, just like a real person. According to the description, the 17 mummies were arranged in 3 rows, with 2 rows containing 8 mummies each and 1 row with a single mummy. This arrangement was a perplexing structure, never seen before in history. Although there were many questions surrounding the mummies at the time of their discovery, for some unknown reason, the story gradually faded into obscurity over the next 60 years. Initially, even the 5 boys who made the discovery didn't seem to care much about what they had found. A newspaper article published in the London Times in 1836 reported that the boys had burned the small wooden coffins immediately after finding them. Fortunately, a professor named Ferguson came to the rescue, saving the coffins. He took them home and was the first to open the small boxes, discovering the mummies inside. After this point, historical records of the study of the 17 miniature mummies disappeared. According to local accounts, the mummies were gradually collected by a few individuals and were lost without anyone noticing. The story of the miniature mummies of Arthur's Seat faded into oblivion. In 1901, 65 years after the discovery, the miniature mummies reappeared. This time, 8 of the 17 coffins were found and donated to the National Museum of Scotland. This was also when serious research into the mystery of the miniature mummies began. Upon investigation, the mummies were found to be made from carved wood. They all shared the characteristic of having one missing arm. According to scientists, the likely reason for the missing arm was to allow the creator to easily sew and dress them. Additionally, among the 8 remaining mummies, only 3 were carefully smoothed, with rounded edges. Archaeologists concluded that at least 2 people must have collaborated to create these mummies. Furthermore, through research by experts Simpson and Menifee on the clothing of the mummies, they confirmed that these creations could not have been made before 1812, the year cotton replaced linen in Scotland. Many theories have been proposed to explain the origin of these miniature mummies. Local people believe that they were figurines used for witchcraft, or simply amulets made by Scottish sailors before they set sail. However, both of these ideas are more mystical and lack evidence. The mummified corpse turns black after coffin is opened. Archaeologists recently discovered and excavated several coffins buried 6.5 feet deep in an ancient cemetery in Xiangcheng, Henan Province, in central China on October 10th. Upon opening the coffins, the research team found 2 skeletons and a male body in a perfectly preserved state, particularly the face. However, within just a few hours after the coffins were opened, the skin on the face and body of the mummy began to turn black and emit a foul odor. The mummy is believed to be about 300 years old, dating back to the Qing dynasty, from 1644 to 1912. It has since been transferred to a university in Henan for further study. Historian Dong Xiong stated, "The clothing on the body suggests the individual was a high-ranking official from the early Qing dynasty. What is astonishing is how the aging process, which would normally take hundreds of years, happened in just one day after exposure to the environment." Dr. Lucas Nicol, a specialist in Chinese archaeology and art at the University of London, remarked that the preservation of the mummy was entirely accidental and not intentional. He said, "Ancient Chinese people did not do anything to preserve and treat the bodies of the deceased the way the Egyptians did. However, they made efforts to protect the bodies by placing them in large coffins and sturdy tombs, as the integrity of the body was very important to the Chinese. In ancient China, people believed the deceased would continue to live in their tombs. Sometimes, bodies from the Qing dynasty were preserved due to the natural conditions around the coffins. In the case of this newly discovered mummy, the body was placed in a lacquered coffin covered in graphite, which was very common at the time. This ensured that bacteria could not penetrate the coffin." Dr. Nicol further explained that once the coffin was opened and air from the outside came into contact with the body, the natural decomposition process began, causing the mummy to turn black and decay rapidly. Meanwhile, Professor Dong Xiong proposed an alternative hypothesis regarding the preservation of the newly discovered mummy. It is possible that the man's family used certain materials to preserve his body. Once the coffin was opened, the natural decomposition process may have started. Currently, archaeologists and scientists are doing their best to preserve the state of the mummy, hoping to uncover new insights about this ancient mummified body. The demon-faced monster reveals itself in the heart of the river. While digging along the dry riverbed in northern Florida, a research team from the Florida Museum of Natural History unearthed the fossilized bones of several elephant species that lived during the Miocene epoch, a geological period that spanned from 23 million to 5.33 million years ago. The most remarkable discovery was that the dominant species in this elephant graveyard was the Gomphothere, a demon-faced beast that roamed the area now known as Florida in large numbers around 6 million years ago. These extinct creatures weighed between 8,800 and 11,000 pounds, about the size of a modern African elephant, but their faces resembled descriptions from monster movies. In addition to the large, sharp tusks growing from their upper jaws, they also had a shorter pair of tusks curving upward from their lower jaws, creating a terrifying appearance. The monster was found in a position as if it had lain down and died, with its bones still in their original positions, almost as though it had been carefully buried. It was an adult Gomphothere, possibly dating back 6 million years, with a height of 7.9 feet and a skull length, including the tusks, of over 8.9 feet. This particular Gomphothere was larger than any of its kind ever recovered from anywhere in the world. It was described as being as large as the African elephant, an animal weighing over 13,000 pounds and measuring up to 13 feet long when fully grown. It is unclear why so many Gomphotheres, along with other animals including elephants and unrelated species, gathered at the riverbed in the Montbrook area. However, researchers have proposed a hypothesis. Similar to modern elephants, elderly and sick ancient monsters may have intentionally laid down near familiar water sources. Over centuries, floods could have carried the bones of other species on top of them, creating a diverse, multi-layered natural graveyard. Of course, this is just an initial hypothesis, and the true reason remains a mystery, challenging the understanding of scientists worldwide. The Cemetery of the Grinning Mummies. In a desolate region of the Nazca Desert, about 18.6 miles from the city of Nazca, Peru, there lies a strange cemetery that, when mentioned, sends chills down the spine of many people. This is the Chowchilla Cemetery, a site that holds skeletons more than 1,000 years old, with a particularly eerie feature. Each skeleton has its jaw wide open as if smiling, creating a mysterious and haunting image. This site fuels the stories of death and the spooky legends surrounding the area, making them even more elusive and difficult to explain. The Chowchilla Cemetery is not a recent discovery. It has existed since the 9th century, during the height of the Nazca civilization. This civilization was known for its strange landmarks, especially the massive drawings etched into the earth, but it mysteriously disappeared around the year 800. The fall of the Nazca civilization remains a question with no clear answer. Many believe that the harsh desertification may have been a significant factor in its decline. The Chowchilla Cemetery, buried beneath the desert for centuries, was rediscovered in the early 20th century. It quickly became the subject of both mystery and fear when archaeological excavations uncovered dry skeletons sitting, leaning against each other, as if engaged in an eternal meeting. Scientists have hypothesized that ancient people may have buried the deceased in a sitting position as a mark of respect for the dead, but the most bizarre aspect is that the skeletons always have their mouths wide open, as though they are grinning from their graves. Another surprising and inexplicable feature is the remarkable preservation of the bones. Even though they have rested in tombs for over 1,000 years, the hair of these skeletons remains intact, soft, and not decayed. This leads many to believe that the native people of the area might have known how to take advantage of the dry, hot desert climate to preserve the bodies without needing the mummification methods used by other civilizations. Adding to the mystery, excavations have revealed that large tombs, buried deep beneath the desert, may have been the final resting places of tribal leaders or powerful figures. However, most of these tombs had been looted, with valuable possessions taken, leaving behind the grinning skeletons as a grim reminder of the cruelty and mysteries of the land. The Chowchilla Cemetery is not just an exceptional archaeological site, but also a place full of mysteries that still need to be unraveled. The strange skeletons, with their eerie grins, remain a great enigma for scientists and anyone who visits this haunting land. What do you think is the reason for these people's mouths being wide open after death? For me, it's really hard to answer. But whatever the reason, it is precisely the strangeness and mystery that have made Chowchilla one of the most fascinating places, attracting not only researchers, but also those who love exploring the unexplained wonders of the world. The most mysterious tiny mummy in history. In the summer of 1934, in central Wyoming, Cecil Main and Frank Carr, two gold prospectors, were searching for their fortune in a deep crevice in the Pedro Mountains. They decided to use dynamite to blast a path into what they suspected was a long-sealed cave. The large explosion blew away the debris, revealing the entrance to the hidden cave. Main crawled into the narrow opening, the cave's interior barely wide enough to accommodate a wardrobe. Although there were clear signs of human presence, they found no gold or valuables. After searching every corner of the cave with growing disappointment, Main discovered something odd placed on a rocky ledge: a mummy. It appeared to be an elderly man sitting on a rock, eyes closed, arms crossed over his chest, and legs curled beneath his body. His skin was dark brown, wrinkled, and dried out due to the dry climate in the area. His forehead was low, his eyes were large, his nose broad, his mouth wide, and his face had a grim, worried expression. In general, the mummy looked like an old, frail, unattractive man. What was strange, however, was the mummy's tiny size. This was clearly the body of a tiny person, standing only about 8 inches tall and weighing roughly 1 pound. At that moment, the two clumsy gold miners had no idea that they had found one of the most mysterious and bizarre artifacts in history. They simply picked up the mummy and brought it back, since there was nothing else to be found in the cave. 2 years after Main's discovery, the mummy from Pedro Mountain made its public debut. By then, it was in the possession of a pharmacy owner named Floyd Jones in the town of Meeteetse, Wyoming. Floyd placed the mummy in his window to attract attention to his pharmacy. It had the desired effect. Nearly everyone who saw it stopped by to take a look at the strange tiny man. Floyd quickly realized the potential for profit in this artifact he held. He began charging people to view the mummy and even printed postcards featuring its image for sale. In 1936, a boy named Eugene Bashore, after convincing his father to pay a 25-cent entry fee, was captivated by the peculiar mummy. He went on to dedicate his life to researching this mysterious artifact. The Pedro Mountain mummy soon became famous, attracting large crowds of visitors and researchers. It also sparked heated debates about its origin and authenticity. Some even arranged for X-rays to be taken of the mummy, and the results confirmed that it was indeed a real body, not a hoax. Beneath the dried, wrinkled skin was a nearly complete skeletal structure. Its bones clearly showed human characteristics, including vertebrae, rib cage, arm bones, and leg bones, but everything was significantly smaller than that of an average human. Many rumors circulated about the origins of this mysterious mummy. Some people believed it was evidence of the existence of tiny humans mentioned in legend. Others thought it might be a mutant dwarf. Eventually, the bizarre mummy was bought by a wealthy businessman named Ivan Goodman, who owned a car dealership in Casper. Goodman used the mummy to promote his car models, calling it a tiny man mummy to spark curiosity among customers. The headless skeletons of a mother and child, wearing fur coats with gold inlays. Recently, archaeologists made a shocking discovery when they announced finding a tomb containing the remains of a woman and a child in the Altai Mountains of Siberia, at the Taldor II burial site of the ancient Prehistoric civilization. These two sets of remains were later confirmed to belong to a mother and child. Both of them were dressed in fur coats adorned with gold, but their heads were missing. What is particularly strange is that the skulls of both the mother and child were found far from their bodies, yet it is unclear whether this was an ancient custom among the Siberians or if there is another explanation. What is certain is that traces of fur coats remained. This suggests that the deceased were dressed warmly, possibly with the belief that they could withstand the cold of the Siberian mountains when embarking on their journey to the afterlife. The tomb also contained two small bronze mirrors and several fragments of pottery, suggesting the tomb dates back around 2,500 years. Additionally, the research team uncovered several intact pieces of ancient gold leaf, which may have been attached to the clothing of the mother and child. Beheading the dead was a common practice during this period. However, this tomb is entirely different from other Prehistoric burial sites that have been studied. According to Dr. Nikita Konstantinov of Gorno-Altaysk University, the practice of beheading the dead originated during wartime. The victorious party often decapitated their defeated enemies to display their power, which is why skulls were never buried with the bodies. However, the case of the mother and child's remains presents a puzzle because, until now, archaeologists had never encountered a headless child's tomb. The careful burial and the beautiful artifacts and clothing found with the bodies suggest that they were not enemies of the tribe. One theory that has been proposed is that the tomb may have been robbed and the thieves removed the heads to prevent evil spirits or ghosts from returning. However, what is puzzling is that there are no signs of disturbance or forced entry, and all the artifacts in the tomb are intact, with only the heads mysteriously missing. This remains an unsolved mystery, leaving scientists with a major question about the beliefs, customs, and mysteries of the Prehistoric civilization, one that may take many more years to decode. Skeletons wearing iron shackles from an ancient Greek military coup. A recent archaeological discovery has raised many questions about the history of violence and bloody events in the past. Specifically, at an ancient Greek cemetery dating from the 5th to 8th centuries BCE, archaeologists discovered at least 80 sets of remains, all with their wrists shackled with iron cuffs, a clear sign of victims who had been executed in mass. However, although the method of execution was the same, the identities of these individuals and the reason they were killed remain an unsolved mystery. The skeletons were buried in a very orderly fashion, unlike victims of brutal trials. Some were lined up neatly in long rows, while others were stacked on top of one another, with limbs folded and their mouths gaping open. This suggests they were not slaves or criminals, but likely individuals of respect in society, despite their tragic end. Archaeologists noted that most of these victims were quite young and in good health when the executions took place, making the story of their deaths even more perplexing. Dr. Stella Chrysolaki, the lead archaeologist on the dig, stated that all the victims had been executed in the same manner, and this was not a typical punishment. The raised arms, with wrists tightly bound by iron cuffs, indicate that this might have been a politically or religiously motivated execution. The discovery was made in the Phaleron Delta area, part of a large ancient cemetery, which was previously used for the burial of the people from that time period. This area was excavated during a project for the construction of an opera house and a national library, expanding the area of discovery to over 440,000 square miles. The current hypothesis is that these skeletons might belong to soldiers who supported Cylon, an Athenian noble and Olympic champion. In 632 BCE, Cylon attempted a failed coup with the help of his father-in-law, the tyrant of Megara. After the failed coup, Cylon fled and took refuge in a temple on the Acropolis, while his supporters were killed. However, these hypotheses have not yet been proven, and researchers are now hopeful that DNA testing and anthropological studies will help them unlock the mystery of these deaths. This discovery not only sheds light on a part of ancient history, but also opens a story about power, political struggle, and the brutality of past coups. Archaeologists hope that future research will provide answers to one of the most mysterious and bloody tales of ancient Greek civilization. Dear friends, with that, the discovery of the skeletons wearing iron shackles concludes today's video. Which discovery impressed you the most? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video. Now, goodbye and see you next time.